Hi, welcome back to an episode of BootUP. My name is Nikki. I'm a technical evangelist at AWS and a previous founder of a startup. And I'm joined by my awesome co-host, Brandon.
Hey everybody, I'm Brandon. Great to be here. I'm also on the evangelist team at AWS. And I worked probably most of my career at startups, so I remember what the struggle is like. So I'm excited to be here today.
We're joined by two awesome startups in the healthcare space, Subtle Medical and HealthTap. Why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Hi everyone, I'm Liren from Subtle Medical. Do you want to introduce the company a little bit too?
Yeah, a little bit.
What we do is we develop software solutions to enhance the image quality of PET and MR scans to make them faster, basically. And then people don't have to stay in the scanner as long, and hospitals can, scan more people with limited resources they have right now.
Cool. Great. My name is Mehra. I'm from HealthTap. My background is I almost became a doctor once and decided that tech was just way more fun. HealthTap is a company where we make an app where you can log in, ask a question, and get an answer from a real doctor, usually for free, usually within minutes. So we have a way to crowdsource answers, kind of like Stack Overflow for you developers out there who understand how that works. But you just have the experts on the other end as all doctors answering your questions. And then we've done a whole bunch of stuff with AI and telemedicine on top of that ever since to make it easier to get advice, prescriptions, diagnosis for anyone around the world.
I'm actually so curious. Let's just dive in. What is the incentive for a doctor to answer a question?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story because so I was the head of product for a good number of years at the company, and when we were first starting to design the product, we said, well, first of all, what's the product? The most common pain point in healthcare that we saw was not, I wish I could push a button and talk to a doctor, which is kind of what everyone talks about today when you think about health tech. It was that people were going to Google, way more than you decide to see a doctor. You go online and you search your symptoms, and your headache becomes a brain cancer in 2 clicks or less.
Yeah, or even worse, you end up on Yahoo Answers, how
Yahoo
is baby
Answers.
formed? And
vaccines are bad for you, right?
I mean, you think you're dying.
Crazy, yeah. So there's no trust, there's no personalized answers. Yes. So we said, okay, what people want is the convenience and speed and freeness of the internet, but they still want a trustworthy personalized answer.
Right.
So doctors are definitely the ultimate source for that. But, if we're going to do this scalably, it would be better if we could somehow tap into crowdsourcing and the volunteer spirit of doctors, because if it's transactional and it's a premium feature, not everyone around the world can use it. Right. And part of our mission was to make doctor knowledge accessible to everyone. So I actually had a background in gaming before this, so I somehow went from pre-med to making video games. We can talk about that story some other time. But what I learned through that startup experience was how to create engaging dynamics that get people to do stuff, like, play another level or buy a virtual good, right? But in the case of doctors, we tapped into their psyche and what they wanted, which was things like, well, first and foremost, they're doctors, so they like helping people. For those of you who know doctors, they're somewhat type A, competitive people. So you create competitive dynamics and leaderboards where you go, oh, you're the 3rd ranked pediatrician in Kansas right now, but if you answer 3 more questions, But the most important, I think, motivations, the intrinsic motivations for doctors was, it's kind of like the like button on Instagram and WhatsApp, on Facebook. But for us, it's a thank you button when members look at an answer, and it's a agree button when doctors look at each other's answers. So imagine being a doctor, you spend a minute answering a patient's question, and then you get thousands of thanks from all around the world, and then you get hundreds of agrees from your colleagues.
Huge dopamine rush.
Huge dopamine rush. You get not only kind of reputation, endorsement, and validation from esteemed colleagues, but you get all this gratitude, which honestly, as a doctor, you don't get that much these days. So
it's like plus oneing an answer on Stack Overflow.
Totally plus oneing, but with slightly different words on the button, and it gives it a different meaning.
Cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So do you have a mobile app, web platform, both? What's your main approach to
Yeah, cross-platform.
Okay.
So, Android, iOS, web app, mobile app. The idea is to be ubiquitous and accessible to everyone around the world. We're actually one of the first health skills on Alexa, which is really cool, which we can talk about in a bit. When we went into a conversational interface, it was really easy to port over into Alexa, because you can imagine the elderly or the handicapped who don't know how to use a smartphone or physically cannot. Would see a lot of utility in just talking to a device in their home and asking about your symptoms.
Expands the number of people you can reach.
Yeah, and if you've asked any of these voice assistants a health question these days, I can say that it's pretty basic what they can answer. So you can imagine a world where it'd be cooler if they could answer a lot more questions by tapping into the wisdom of the crowd of doctors.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Hey.
Liren, what is your founding story? How did Subtle Medical get their start, or where did you guys come up with the idea?
Right. I think two of our, we have two co-founders, and one of them is actually a radiologist in Stanford. The other guy is actually a younger guy than me, and he worked for the radiologist co-founder before in his lab. And then they basically started developing deep learning-based algorithm to, make faster MR images to look almost on par with what you get in a regular scan. So that's where our idea started. And then they figure it's so much superior to whatever you can get right now on the market to make faster scan to higher quality. So they decided to make not just stop at the patent. They decided to make a product out of that. So I joined right after they decided to found the company, and then we started developing software platforms to deliver those algorithms to hospitals. So it's a little bit different from the two consumer approach you just heard.
Yeah.
So we're I would say less cool because we're talking directly to the hospitals, not so super visible to a lot of patients.
Well, let's make this cooler. Let's back up. How long does it typically wait? How long does a patient have to wait inside the MRI machine until they can exit the MRI machine?
Right.
How long does it take? And what is the new time with Subtle Medicals?
Right. So usually it takes about 40 minutes if you ever did a MR scan before.
Well,
it
that's
depends.
not a comfortable experience.
No, it's no fun.
You don't want to
giant
stay there.
spinning magnet.
You're lying in a machine that's about this far away from you.
And you can't move.
In a tube, and can't move, and you don't know what's happening, and there's loud noises around you, because the magnet's changing, so that actually create a lot of noise to you. And we can make it almost 4 times faster. We're working towards that, but right now we're targeting 4 times faster, which means it's a 10-minute scan instead of a 40-minute scan. Right. Right. It's much more comfortable for the patients, we would say. And also it makes possible to scan people that's not, gonna follow your command for 40 minutes. I mean, we're talking about little kids. Some people just don't want to stay there. They can't. They have, claustrophobia or whatever.
Yeah.
A lot of people just can't stand 40 minutes staying in the scanner. Right. So that's what we're working towards.
So wow, decreasing it to 10 minutes is a huge difference.
Right.
And that makes the difference for all the consumers, everyone out there.
Hopefully, yeah.
So where do you guys have it now? So you said we're trying to get to 10 minutes, or are you on your way, or?
Right. We actually already have a FDA cleared product for not MR but PET, but similar story for PET, right? It's also close to half an hour.
What
scan.
is PET?
Well, it's a scan you would get if you're diagnosed with cancer.
Got it.
So it's a standard scan for a cancer patient to determine what stage or whether you're actually diagnosed with cancer, or if there's metastasis around your body, if the cancer cells is traveling in your bloodstream to some other side, which could be a serious, but it's a serious problem, right? So we do a faster scan for that as well. We actually have an FDA cleared product for that, which can improve the speed to 4 times faster.
So what is the original speed versus the now
Right, it's
speed?
about 30 minutes to 20 minutes to 5 minutes.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
So I want to know a little bit about how you're actually doing this. Is it like, so you said it's a proprietary deep learning algorithm
Right.
that you developed. Is this something that you're applying to the images, the results of the scan, or
Right.
is this something that happens during the process? Can you tell me a little bit more about how that deep learning works?
So actually, faster protocols are already there on the scanners. It's just doctors don't want to use them right now because they produce images with higher noise or lower resolution. So for PET NMR, for PET specifically, we actually have a denoising algorithm, which takes in whatever image that you produce with faster protocol, typically very noisy. And we have a deep learning-based algorithm to actually remove the noise from those images and give back what you will get in a standard scan. So it's purely image to image. For deep learning folks out there, similar to what Pix2Pix would look like, kind of like one of those deep learning networks that's out there that operates in image space from image to image. Similar story for MR, although the problem we're trying to tackle is a little bit different. There's also a resolution problem in MR. So it's like there are a lot of what they call super resolution algorithms out there for natural image and for medical images. But we're training similar stuff. The proprietary part comes in because we have access to what we think a better quality image, like training image, because these images are not that easy to get out there because people don't usually scan the faster protocols. So it's difficult to get paired training samples out there. So we actually we are in collaboration with a number of different hospitals, research centers across the country acquiring these data for us.
I'm imagining a turbo button on the MRI machine like my old 386 had when I was a kid.
It's not as fancy as that. I mean, it's sort of like a turbo button. You can actually configure the current scanners to scan that way, but it's just nobody want to use that. You know, nobody's comfortable with these images to make diagnostic decisions.
So now that you're FDA approved with the PAT scan, which hospitals can you get this faster version in today, or where are you generally located?
Right. We're doing what we call an economic study with a hospital chain called Hoag in Southern California.
I know Hoag Hospital.
Yeah, Newport Beach.
Yeah, if it's where I'm from.
Right. Oh, wait, I didn't know that. Anyway, we're doing an economic study there, meaning we're actually putting our product within their current clinical workflow and try to figure out, there's always going to be dead time. Like we can increase the scan, we can actually decrease the scan time 4 times faster, but there's dead time before the scan and after scan. You have to, actually put into the clinical workflow to figure out how much benefit you're going to get for the hospitals and for the patients. We're trying to figure that out, and we're trying to figure out whether there's economic gain for the hospitals and whatever imaging centers out there that can get by using our product. And what kind of impact would that have with their clinical workflow? Because technologists have to maybe spend a little more time on the scanner because they're scanning basically in the same day. They're scanning more people. And radiologists might have increased the workflow because they have to read more scans, like what kind of impact that's going to have. And we're also talking with a few hospitals, both on the East Coast and on the West Coast. We're actually only expanding on both coasts right now because we have a smaller sales team. But yeah, we're rolling out the product a little bit slowly, but we're doing that.
Right. Well, how do you guys see the current healthcare landscape? I think that ties into that. Like, do things move a little bit slower where you're like, we're moving fast, we're trying to go faster than the normal speed that the healthcare systems, like, they won't meet you at that speed that you're trying to go? Or how do you guys currently view the landscape of healthcare?
Right. Well, I'll start a little bit because we're closer to the regulated part. And so the regulation definitely slows you down a little bit. Like you can't just roll out a new version of software like by pushing a button on your DevOps machines, and you can deliver something new to your customer. For us, because it's FDA regulated, we have to have what they call a quality system in place to make sure whatever we're doing, whatever new stuff we're doing is going to be, compliant with what we're cleared for. But I think the mentality of the regulatory bodies are changing a little bit. I don't know if you guys heard about FDA actually rolled out a pre-certified program a few months ago. They are trying to certify software, specifically software providers, to make that cycle a little bit faster to go through. Yeah, but we're looking at it. I think these years, in the past few years, I think the whole industry is coming around with new innovations, especially in software area.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, I would say, when it comes to the world of medical devices and medical device grade software, there's definitely a regulatory hurdle, especially around FDA approvals that's needed. You're starting to see a little bit more of that with consumer software, with just patient safety in mind. As soon as you get into AI bots, telling patients what to do, you just want to make sure that there's some governance to make sure some developer is thinking about all the ways it could go wrong. Right. And be harmful,
Absolutely.
right? So you're starting to see a little bit more of the regulation happen on the consumer side, but I think, honestly, the bigger issue in friction in healthcare is not the work and hurdles you have to go through for regulatory, it's actually the incentives. And that just means that there are folks who actually would either lose their job or their company would lose core revenue, or it would be bad for business to disrupt the way they work.
Yeah.
Right.
And so there's a lot of resistance to change as much as there is a pain point and need for change.
Right.
And so it's often about navigating the people you're doing business with and making it a win-win type of innovation. And that requires business engineering, not just technical engineering.
Yep.
Yeah.
So like what you were talking about in the beginning with how you guys incentivize doctors to...
Yeah, kind of, exactly. So in that case, that was using intrinsic motivations, thinking about what do doctors want, if not money, to help people. And in the case of HealthTap, we also realized if we're really going to get mass adoption and get HealthTap accessible to everyone, especially in this country, we weren't going to do that by charging customers for something that they weren't used to paying for. So most of us have insurance and we don't pay for the doctor visit. So creating a freemium product that said, I know you don't usually pay $40 for a doctor visit, but now you can, is not really a great sell.
Yep.
So we knew that in order to create a great seamless experience that made sense for consumers, we had to create business alignment with insurance companies and employers. So HealthTap is actually primarily focused on distributing the app through enterprises, but in this case, these are companies who are in the business of saving money and reducing their bills because they pay for the healthcare bills for their employees or insurance holders. And so what we go to them and say is, if you deploy HealthTap to your population, you'll see your costs go down because people won't go to the emergency room as much. They won't hit the urgent care clinics or even maybe see a human doctor when they don't need to. Heck, they may not even do a telemedicine visit, which, although it's cheaper, still requires paying a human doctor for their time. Maybe they can self-serve an answer or a plan to fix their own cold.
Do you have any memorable metrics around that, or metrics that you would be proud to share?
Yeah. So we talked about the thank you button. So instead of just making it a very binary, did someone thank or not, we actually have a follow-on modal that comes up and says, would you like to leave a note for the doctor? In which there's kind of a text area and people can type in some words of gratitude. And we started just doing some very basic parsing of all of those notes coming in to see how many times people expressed the sentiment, you saved my life, or the life of a loved one.
Wow.
And I don't know what exact count we're at today, but I know last we checked it was somewhere around the order of 27,000 notes since we started.
Wow.
And if you understand funnels in consumer apps, that's a tiny fraction of the number of people we probably helped that never hit a thank button or express that note.
Yeah.
But that's super fulfilling to get, tens of notes every night of people saying that, whether we actually saved their life or just kind of engendered that sentiment in them. It's a pretty cool thing to say that you've created a machine that makes people feel that way.
It's definitely incredible.
So I have a question about sort of healthcare startups in general. You have a medical background. You said you were almost a doctor. 2 founders of your company both were radiologists. It's kind of like you basically have to be pretty attached to the industry to create a tech startup focused on healthcare. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I would say yes. I mean, the healthcare industry their needs are so specialized. You kind of have to be in there and experience their pain in order to understand what's actually needed. I mean, some of the stuff, I would say it's so different from conventional tech startups where everybody is like a consumer of tech products out there. So you kind of like understand the beginning of those pains as a regular consumer. But in healthcare, I mean, first of all, there are so many players in this system. I mean, there's providers, there's patients, there's also payers, insurance companies. So you have to be able to understand the baseline of this dynamic in order to come up with the business strategy that can actually work. It's just a much more complex system to navigate, and also some of the needs. I mean. You have to also balance between what's possible and what's actually needed in the market. So my view of especially the business part, like to business part, kind of like the industry, not really consumer facing part of that industry, is that there's already existing players in there, and if you're a founder and you don't understand how these existing players, with so much power within the industry already, how they play their game, and then you want to just go in there and disrupt that. It's usually a recipe for disaster. I mean, that's why I believe you see a lot of founders in this area usually have some basic background of medical, like healthcare provider, like healthcare industry. It helps you to understand how to navigate that.
Yeah, I think I would probably say something a little bit more nuanced, although I totally agree with you, which is that healthcare, medicine, or otherwise, I think if you're going to create a product or technology, it's about understanding your users and empathizing with them and building a product that fits into their workflow and lives and actually solves a real pain point. So regardless of whether that's doctors or patients or construction workers or lawyers or whoever, factory workers, I think it helps to be one of them, to empathize and understand how they work and the system and constraints around which they operate. But I don't want to dissuade entrepreneurs who are not of a healthcare background to enter the healthcare space, because so long as you have that discipline and bias towards empathizing and understanding your audience and surrounding yourself with people who do, I think the best way to do it is to just form a cross-discipline team. A developer and a doctor and a designer and a data scientist coming together would be the supreme team in healthcare.
Right.
Well, I love how you included a data scientist in there. It definitely seems apparent to me, as someone who's a bit on the outside of this industry, that things like machine learning are going to rapidly start reshaping how we think about some of these things. I mean, I read studies on how machines are way better at diagnosing anomalies in chest x-rays and those sorts of things. So I guess I'm interested to hear like sort of what you guys think about the trend of ML in healthcare broadly, but also specifically like how are you using it, and if so, like I just want to hear about that.
Yeah.
Right. I think for us, I mean, it's actually our core technology, right? We're using deep learning algorithms, but although we're not really using deep learning algorithms in a way that a lot of people would think, like making diagnostic decisions right away. I feel like the market and the regulatory bodies are not that ready right now to accept that kind of technology. Although there are evidences that support it, machines can make some of these tasks, that can do some of these tasks much better than humans. I think people are not that easy to say, okay, I'm going to accept a machine that makes 0.1% of the errors, and stuff like people may be more accepting to a person making 1% of the errors. So there's also that part in there. But for us, I mean, using machine learning algorithms to do the denoising part, like to do the image enhancement part, it's an easier way to get into that and utilize whatever's new technology is out there in the machine learning area. Although we do see that a lot of hospitals are trying to leverage the machine learning part to do what they call a clinical decision-making support, which means they're trying to optimize where they staff people. They're trying to optimize how their hospital operations goes. I mean, this trend, you can see it there. And I believe, like, we are actually thinking about Subtle Medical. We are thinking about like how we can get in there. Maybe that's a business opportunity. But it's going to take some time for people to figure out, for us or for anybody who's out there trying to make a new business out of it. But I feel like the market is getting used to this new technology, and I believe machine learning is over that hype curve, and we're somewhere in the middle of it becoming actually useful.
Right.
So it's a good timing for anybody out there who's trying to use machine learning to make the healthcare part a little bit easier, especially for us. I'm viewing this from a hospital's point of view.
Yeah.
There's definitely opportunities out
That
there.
makes a lot of sense. I hadn't thought about it from sort of using machine learning to figure out how to orchestrate the
Right.
hospital. You can tell I'm a software developer.
Right.
I'm like, oh, that reminds me of.
Yeah,
but it's definitely an interesting thing. I was purely thinking about it from like, how do we make more effective diagnoses? But sounds like that's not actually where the low-hanging fruit is.
We're gonna get there. I think.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna get there, and you can see like actually a lot of hospitals are already employing a lot of data scientists to do that kind of work.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, so at HealthTap, we do use AI now. We didn't start doing so, but what we realized a few years into our journey was that the most common question that people have is, I have symptoms, what could it be and what should I do? Lo and behold, right? So
Yeah.
it makes sense. So we just challenged ourselves if we could automate even further some of that experience around answering those questions, not even needing to resort to crowdsourcing. So we took all of this really rich data we had around what people were asking and in the context of their health profiles, how doctors were answering, how they were peer reviewing each other's answers. Really good training data to feed a machine to learn the answer to the next question around, I'm Jane Doe with XYZ symptoms and XYZ medications and conditions. What's the most probable thing going on with me and what should I do next? So we call that experience in that bot Dr. AI. It essentially conducts a conversational interview with you. It asks you follow-up questions, so tell me about your headache and how quickly did it come on and does it get better or worse when you do Y? But then it gives you a list of probably sorted explanations. So it's not really a diagnosis per se, but it's essentially guided triage. So it says, most probably your headache is not a brain cancer. So let's not make a appointment with an oncologist right now. Yeah. Let's, maybe try this care plan on taking some rest, drinking some water, and
Maybe you're a little
taking a nap.
dehydrated.
Yeah, whatever. And then it actually helps you talk to a doctor to get an actual diagnosis. So if it says, hey, look, I think this might be pink eye. And we can probably give you an antibiotic online right now. Why don't you push a button, video chat with the doctor? And then we had the interface where for the doctor, the AI was now not only triaging the patient, it was helping the doctor provide better care because the whole conversation interview the bot had with the patient, the doctor didn't need to have again because all of the answers were summarized right in front of the doctor. So you're saving precious minutes in the visit, you're saving precious clinical time. And then when it came down to making a diagnostic decision, to your point about clinical decision support, we were suggesting to the doctor what the machine thought the answer was. So we think it's conjunctivitis, pink eye. It may be something else. Your call, you're the doctor, but heads up, this is what the machine thinks. So it was more of a suggestion, which kind of segues into what our view of AI is in healthcare in general. We think, at least at HealthTap, we believe in the idea of augmented intelligence in the sense that the best place for AI right now is to augment the mind of a doctor, kind of making the superhuman cyborg doctor that is far superior and better than the doctor alone. So it's a world of man plus machine, not man versus machine. There was an article, I think just today, this morning, that one of my teammates shared with me saying, AI is like the stethoscope of the future. Yeah. If you think about it, you're enhancing doctors' hearing to better evaluate what's going on with your heart. Right. That's really what AI is doing. It's enhancing the
like
decisions
a
that patients
basically.
and doctors are going to make. Yeah.
Right.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
So what, does AWS help you guys at all with your machine learning or AI usage, or how have you used AWS to further your products or what you guys are doing?
Right. For us, because we're mainly running very heavy lifting kind of deep learning algorithms, so we kind of have to have access to GPUs, and at very least, you have to have like modern CPUs available. So for us, where our architecture, software architecture is built around cloud computing. Because even nowadays, it's very difficult to actually get GPU on any hospital's network or their data center. So for us, we build an entire software architecture around AWS services. So we have some IoT services managing our on-premise kind of like front end, because we have to have an interface that makes our software that's within their network, within their current IT infrastructure. So we have like a low footprint, small footprint kind of like front end inside their hospital, and we're using IoT core to manage these installments. On the back-end side, we use a lot of AWS services. Most noticeably is AWS Batch, which allows us to get access to GPU infrastructure and run our deep learning algorithms on GPU fleet. That's about that.
What about you, Sean?
Yeah, we recently made the switch from another cloud company who shall not be named to AWS SageMaker for ML specifically.
Cool.
So we've been an AWS customer since the beginning of the company, using all of the services, all of them. But SageMaker in particular, we found very useful. It was much better documented, just easier to get up and going, and just use TensorFlow and train our AI models.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I want to know, kind of moving away from the how did you build it, what problems are you solving kind of thing. I'm thinking back to my days at a startup, and there were certain days where you start off feeling like you're on top of the world, and then an hour later you get that email that just completely crushes your soul.
Could be 2 minutes later.
Could be 2 minutes later, yeah. I want to know what has been your worst day working at a startup so far? And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I can vividly remember mine, so I'm just curious if you have a story.
I'm going to have to punt this one while I think about it.
Okay. Worst day, that's a tough question. Let me think about it. I mean, I probably need to... well, we've had, actually a few days ago.
A few days ago.
I mean,
yesterday and the day before.
Yeah,
and the
I've
day before.
had worst day, so many worst days in my life. But we've had one of our potential customers. We're engaging with them, and then what we do when we engage a new customer is we ask them to send us their particular scanner data, send their data, and we do an internal QA for them. The worst day, the thing happened was basically we did a QA, and we believe the image quality are good enough, and we happily sent over the results to them, and we got 0 good feedback. They raised 5 different questions on our results, and then we had to basically start addressing them. So I think for us, it's always a stress, like when we are starting to engage, because this is like relatively new technology.
Yeah.
I mean, people are more picky on new stuff. So for us, we're constantly under that kind of pressure, and I think we're getting through that, and trying to figure out what's the expectation from our new customers might be, and then on our technology side, we try to get as widely possible data as, because we're talking about deep learning, you have to expose the models to, as wide a range of possible data as possible. So, yeah, I think that was one of the worst days I had in recent month.
But that's a valuable worst day though, because you learned a lot, and you're able to take the feedback from that potential client, review it, and figure out how to have another go. So that's not necessarily terrible.
Well, it's very stressful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, to the point of stress, in healthcare especially, there's a sense of responsibility and accountability with your software. A lot like, NASA's mission critical, programs that run satellite launches. You really don't want it to go down. You don't want it to have bugs, because at least in healthcare, and especially with a consumer app, there's real people on the other end of it who may not get that answer that could save their life, or even just have that stress alleviated in that moment that they were super worried about. So there's a constant tension about keeping the system up and performant and working well. So I think there's a lot of micro bad moments, not worst days necessarily, but oh my God, that's not working. And then you really want to jump on it because you feel like you're doing something important for people that requires immediate attention. So there's been plenty of those along the ways. I remember one particular day that started off a terrible day, but then ended up one of the best days.
That's a better story. Let's hear that.
Yeah, that's a great story.
It was a Saturday, and I got a call from our CEO at the time saying, we have one of our employer customers who have a bunch of employees in India that we don't currently serve, who just were victims of a huge monsoon flood. So there were terrible torrential rains and floods in Chennai in India. And, when there's flooding, you have people basically locked in their own homes. They can't seek medical care. There's water everywhere, so you have risk of infection and disease. What can we do to help? And I'm thinking, oh my God, well, I was about to go to brunch with my friends. So I'm going to cancel that first and think about what we can do to help as a tech company. And what we did was we actually, we all started making calls to each other and collaborating, and decided that what we can do is quickly get all of their emails and phone numbers and send them registration links to quickly get onto the app. I mean, these weren't users, but they were, employees of one of our customers. And we then sent out a bunch of emails to our infectious disease specialists and doctors saying, can you create some guides on what to do in case of flooding, and how to, the to-dos and not to-dos in that situation. And then we also kind of enabled free access to video chat with US doctors if people couldn't see a doctor and needed to from their smartphones. And everyone had a smartphone with a data plan, even if they couldn't go to their car without a boat, right?
Yeah.
So we were able to essentially deploy Doctors Without Borders, but digitally, in this area for people in need. And then I remember one of our employees, kind of totally unrelated, was on a family trip to India and ran into somebody in a cafe in Chennai and said, oh my God, I recognize that logo on your shirt, your HealthTap. That app really saved my sick mom who needed help in that moment. And that was a super rewarding story. So it started really stressful on a weekend, but within 24 hours, we had all this virtual help deployed to all these people.
Incredible.
Yeah, it was a fun time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Looks like we have some questions here. So Chuck I-33 says, curious if this startup field, like the one previously last week where people's health or well-being is involved, is a stress point because you aren't allowed to move fast and break things. I think, Chuck, we actually covered that previously when I asked if there was a lot of friction with moving fast in the healthcare space.
And I'm pretty sure that's Chuck Lee. It's Leet speak. You gotta practice
Lee.
it. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Come on.
Failed.
Chuck
Rob Zhu wants to know about your most forgettable day.
I forgot mine.
Yeah, me too. There was, I heard a joke once about a patient with amnesia, but I forgot how it goes.
That's very similar to the UDP jokes I usually tell, but people don't get them.
So obviously we just talked about your worst days. What actually helps you guys get through your worst days? Is it like something specific,
take
like
one.
a special brand of ramen?
Well,
Yeah, what makes the startup worth it? What makes the startup
Yeah.
worth the pain?
oh man, everything. It's what's not worth it about it, and the lows come with the highs, right? At the end of the day, you're usually creating something the world didn't have before.
Right.
And I think there's reward in being a value creator in the universe, right? You reduce entropy in the system and you channel it into a new product that makes people's lives better. And when you hear validating stories from customers or users that what you're doing is fundamentally helping them live a happier, healthier, longer life. I was in gaming, and one of the reasons that I left making video games was ultimately I was helping entertain people. And you could say it's a noble cause, right? You're reducing boredom and you're creating happiness for people. But to prolong someone's life, is fundamentally a different type of reward.
Yeah.
What more can you ask for?
What's that?
I brought a book that I thought was really funny. So I saw this across my desk. One of my team members was using this legitimately for their work, but when I read it, I cracked up. It's a book that says, "What's wrong with me?" And I felt it was so appropriate in the moment because, every entrepreneur has these existential crises where you ask that question, like, everything's going wrong, what's wrong with me? But it was super relevant to what we're doing because we're building, these symptom assessment AI models, which literally have to answer that question for you.
Right.
But it's a good question to kind of laugh about when things aren't always going well.
The number of times I asked myself that, just an absurd number of times.
Yeah.
No, I think that's great though. My very first job, I was writing software for coal mines and gold mines, and I really felt like I was actively inserting evil into the world in many regards. And thankfully, my jobs since then have been, I think, on the positive side on balance. But I think that's a great point. And I love video games too, and I shout out to all the people that are still out there making awesome video games. I think they're, like you said, they're making people's lives more interesting. What's the point of prolonging a life if it's full of misery and no joy? But
Yeah, that's true too.
But yeah, I think that's a great point. I also miss being like super directly connected to the impact of the work, right? Like, I love my job at AWS, but there's a lot of layers between what I do and how it actually nudges the business. And when you're at a startup, you kind of got your hand right on the rudder. I think it's
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
kind of fun.
Completely true.
Yeah.
Got a question here from Baya Creator. Any tricks or suggestions for dealing with hospital IT? They seem to push back on all things.
Right. Well, that's gonna be like my list of very bad days. Is dealing with hospital ITs. I mean, they are very risk averse. They don't want to do a lot of stuff that's new. They don't want to do a lot of stuff that's potentially risky. I think the only thing you can do with hospital ITs is just to be very patient while you apply and recognize the hard work that you're doing. They don't get the recognition a lot. I mean, the radiologists, the doctors gets all the spotlight, and the executives gets all the decision making, and the IT people are just there to help the business to flow. So I think that's a very important note that I learned, is just to be able to recognize their contribution to whatever organization they're working for, and recognize there's actual need behind their work. They need to keep hundreds and even sometimes thousands of different machines, running and reliably running, because most of their workflows are mission critical. So just a little bit understanding on both sides. I mean, if you understand
some
their
empathy.
job, if you understand their job, they tend to be more, possible to understand what you are trying to do. And sometimes, I mean, these people are also very interested in new stuff, actually, although they might
they're tech
not.
geeks too.
Yeah, they're tech geeks.
Yeah.
They might not want to do the most state-of-the-art things for you, but if you explain what's behind it and how your stuff works, they might get really interested, and that helps a little bit about like moving things forward with hospitality.
Totally agree. I mean, it comes back to empathize with who you're speaking to or working with, and think about their incentives, right? So just going back to that point, these people are in the business, like you said, of making sure things don't go wrong.
Right.
Because people's lives depend on the systems that they run and operate.
Right.
So once you put yourself in their shoes and understand that job, and you address those concerns and needs, then around that, how do you work with them and make them feel safe that they can deploy maybe your newer technology in a way that is lower risk, roll it out in a certain way where they can test it along the way. And I think that's a good life lesson in general. Hospital IT or otherwise, just understand who you're speaking to and figure out what works for them too.
Yeah.
Customer obsession.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. That's
So
the most important thing.
we actually have to wrap here in a couple of minutes, but before we do, like, are your teams hiring? Do you want to share like what website people can go to if they're interested in joining your teams? As we mentioned, you know, it's more fulfilling to work in a company where you are feeling the impact of what you're doing. So do you want to share a little bit about roles available?
Yeah, we're definitely hiring. I mean, all the startups are probably all hiring. We have a careers page on our website, subtlemedical.com. We're looking for data scientists, specifically deep learning, and hopefully with some imaging background. We're also hiring software engineers for our software platform.
In any specific area in the Bay Area?
Yeah,
coast, you said, or you're happy on the coast?
Mostly in the Bay Area.
Okay.
Yeah, we
cool.
don't want to put the team all over the country.
Yeah.
And what stack?
Right. For our software, we're actually using full stack is purely on TypeScript or JavaScript.
Okay.
But our backend is on Python. So
Cool.
yeah, with some TensorFlow experience will be helpful too.
I know there's probably some TypeScript fans out there.
I like that language.
Yeah, I do too. I haven't built anything serious with it, but it's like I don't know, it's like JavaScript but with a warm security blanket.
Yeah. I need
That's a
deep blanket.
really good
Yeah,
description
I like
for
it.
That's funny. Yeah, same. We are hiring across the board. So healthtap.com/careers.
I got you.
We're a product engineering, design, and AI team. So roles across the board there, and others too. If you're not technical, we have other roles as well. So definitely encourage you guys to apply.
Yeah.
Cool.
And it's a dog-friendly office if you like dogs. So
Oh, that's
it's a big
plus.
perk. Yeah.
I love dogs. I think I don't know. I probably treat my dog like HealthTap, where I'm like opening up to it and having conversations. It's like my therapist and my doctor and my best friend. Dogs are
As long as your dog's not called Alexa, it won't be confusing.
Yeah, our CEO actually brings his dogs to work, and we have to take her to the meetings too because she's kind of needy.
Yeah. We actually have an office building in Seattle called Rufus, which is named after the very first Amazon office dog.
Very
cool.
cool.
Well, there's a huge
I just learned
dogs.
something too.
Yeah, right. So there's a huge dogs at work culture at lots of Amazon and AWS locations.
I think they just make the whole workplace super fun.
Yeah, right.
I agree. So we have like 2 minutes left. Any final thoughts you want to leave the viewers with about entrepreneurship, startups, healthcare, anything?
I don't know.
Oh,
Any
man.
advice?
Let's start.
I think, if you have the means and the skills and the motivation, do something entrepreneurial and innovative because the world needs it.
Yep.
Right.
The world needs more people willing to take the risk and create value in the world.
Yeah.
So.
I would say specifically for healthcare, this is a really good time to start. I think the market started to crack, and people are getting, more and more, used to whatever news out there, and think it's normally not a very good very easy place to start a business, but now I think the climate is changing a little bit.
Yeah. In fact, I'll just piggyback onto that. There's probably 3 themes that we care about in healthcare that I think are so prominent that if at least jogs areas where you can think about helping. One is the fact that costs are growing unsustainably. It's like almost 20% of our economy now, and it continues to outstrip our GDP growth. So it's not sustainable. Second, the consumer experience is super confusing and stress-inducing. So anything you can do to improve the end user experience, either digitally or even in the real world, like orchestrating a waiting room or make a big difference, and making scheduling easy. I mean, these are not brand new AI technologies. Sometimes it's just simple ways of changing the experience. And then the third thing is thinking about the healthcare providers. There's a huge shortage of them. They're overworked, often underpaid. And whatever we can do to make their lives better and more rewarding at the end of the day, we can't build medical schools fast enough. So we need to build technology that can help the doctors that we do have do their job better.
Awesome. Well, you guys heard it here. There's plenty of opportunity in the healthcare space if you want to get going and boot up your next healthcare startup. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been fun. Thank you so much, Sean, Liren. Thank you for
very much.
coming by.
Thanks for having
It was
us.
awesome.
Yeah.
We'll see you guys next week.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Thanks.